Continuing Perek Aleph of Kuntres HaHispaalus. Previously, we talked about how he reviewed the issues that people were having different mistakes about what is proper, whether it's proper to have excitement or not. And he talked about how the main thing is to have a sincere um, inspiration, and this is called the revelation of godliness in ourself. And this is the main purpose of the teachings of Chassidus and the Alter Rebbe, and brings the main perfection of Mashiach. And now we're going to talk about the opposite side if a person is doing it in a way that's not sincere and that's fake. And in contrast or opposition to this, mamish, completely, literally, who inyan hispailos leiv basar hachitzaini beretichos v'slavos eish zora abad meretichos hadam bilvad. This is when a person has a completely external, basically it's like a fake or just a type of a feeling where a person gets himself worked up, and they have this foreign fire, which is just coming from what he calls the boiling of the blood. They're just getting themselves worked up or heated up. So a person can work themselves into a state where they feel different emotions, where they feel inspired. But if it's not focused towards God, then it's not a godly thing at all. Asher loy ba'esh Hashem klal klal, which God is not in this fire at all. Ki im his godless liba yibesara, he's just expressing his feelings of his heart and his flesh, bechamimos rashbi esh, just with this burning fire, the hachem is atzmai, just to warm himself, so that the person can do certain things to get himself emotional, to get himself worked up, to feel spiritual things, to feel uplifted. B'mashe yaragish bechinas hispailos, because in feeling this inspiration. So sometimes a person could be looking for inspiration, they could be looking for a spiritual high, and so a person could do certain things where they're chasing that feeling and they get that feeling. But this sense of inspiration is actually very diluted. It's very confused. It's very fooled. The person's fooling themselves, deluding themselves. B'lashon Yiddish zer genart by zich. He's fooling himself very much. And the problem is, if a person is just chasing this type of feeling and they want to feel spiritual, they want to feel holy, and they're looking for this kind of high, then the person can come to delude themselves with completely false and vain imaginations where they imagine that they're experiencing all kind of high spiritual things. They think they're very holy, and it really just becomes their ego runs away with them, and it becomes very delusional and very detrimental. And there's actually a mimer of the Alter Rebbe about this as well. It talks a little bit about it also later in Sha'ar Yichud. Kiduaz is known, ze gam b'mili de'alma, even in worldly things, that a person that just fantasizes about things, they can come to delude themselves, and it's not healthy. Ubederech halotza zeh she'amru loy tispalu al dimchem, and in a way of like a cute hint for this, they said that you shouldn't daven over your blood. Meaning that you shouldn't pray just with your blood. It shouldn't just be that you're getting yourself worked up. Ella b'nefesh b'dam. You have to pray with the soul that's in the blood. There has to be that inner content, that inner understanding that's motivating and causing the emotions, as opposed to just doing something to feel a certain feeling. And in general, this is in life. Anytime a person is just chasing a certain feeling, feelings should be, they're like warning lights. It's just a symptom. If a person's check engine light comes on, changing the light bulb or something isn't gonna fix the problem. And the same way, if a person just, turns a light on or off, it's just treating this, that's just the external symptom. And so just like, and same thing, if a person's, let's say, wants to feel loved or feel love in a relationship, a person shouldn't be chasing that feeling. They should be chasing, looking to invest in having meaningful relationships, and automatically they'll feel that way. And if a person's chasing the feeling, that's really a distraction, which causes things to become diluted and things like that, as opposed to where a person looks to just have a sincere, real feel relationship, let's say, and then automatically those feelings will come. And those feelings are an outgrowth and a symptom of that, but they shouldn't be the focus. And so that's the way it is with all these type of emotions and feelings, that they should be a natural outgrowth but a person shouldn't be seeking them out as their own thing. He move on because it's understood. I'm sorry. Va'alza Nemer, about this it says, Lo yachpaitz ksil betvuna, that the fool does not desire understanding. In our case, if a person is sincerely interested in knowing God, their focus will be on learning and really seeking to understand and doing the hisbaitinus that we're going to talk about. And automatically the feelings will come and they'll be real and they'll be true and they'll be sincere. But if a person is just chasing the feelings and they're only doing whatever, thinking about whatever they need to do with in order to get the feeling, it's going to end up being a distraction and it's going to pull them away from really trying to understand. Instead, they're going to be chasing the spiritual high, which will lead them to quit way before they really understand anything of meaning and significance, and it's not going to cause a true, sincere feeling that's really deep in a person. So this is what it says: the fool does not desire understanding. He just wants the expression of his heart. Just wants to have the feeling. Ukiyadua, as is known, lechol, to everyone, and it's unnecessary to dwell, to go into this at length. He move on lechol because this is understood to everyone. Mi shatam tam amiti benafshe bedivelikim chayim ha mushtayim, that any person that has experience, that has just tasted this experience of truly studying Chassidus, even once or twice, shetisna nafshe ma'ay der sheker muta kazeh, that they will despise, will be like repulsive to them to have this type of fake spirituality where a person is just going to do this kind of fluffy meditation or something and just imagine things without really any real understanding behind it. Once a person has tasted true understanding that's real and deep and meaningful and personal, so that kind of fluff is just feels very false to them. They won't be to tolerate it all. Because that type of fake spirituality leads to coarseness and arrogance and a lot of external shows of holiness and spirituality afterwards that are a big distraction and they're very disingenuous and they're fake. Midvekos zara hazais, from this false attachment. Laimar aniva afsiai, the person says that there's just me, there's nothing else. They think that the greatest thing in the world, mitzan hargashas atzab, because they really feel themselves. It's really a big ego trip for them to be holy and things like that. And so people that are on that type of holier than thou spiritual trip, it becomes disgusting to a person that has tasted the truth. And the same thing, like in any relationship, a person that's experienced a healthy, loving relationship, somebody that's just coming and sweet talking and it just feels fake and manipulative, and a person can't handle it. To the point where a person that's chasing this type of false spirituality and they become arrogant, just like a person that's arrogant from any physical thing, just like a person that's all into themselves because of their money and their honor and that kind of thing. And so there's nothing holy or spiritual about it. Gam yipol hanayfel mizeh b'taivas atzmei, and not only that, this false spirituality leads to arrogance, which then leads the person to fall into all sorts of taivas, where their cravings, they fall prey to their evil inclination, and it actually fuels the evil inclination, and eventually they get into all kinds of bad things. And unfortunately, every now and then in the news, there's stories about this type of stuff of somebody that's supposed to be some holy spiritual person, and then they get mixed into things they shouldn't get mixed into. Hashem should protect us. So sometimes it can come from these type of things, like all these cults and all these type of things. That's a lot of times they're selling this false spirituality, but it's really very egotistical and very debased. So we definitely want to stay clear of anything that's like that. And eventually this type of false spirituality can lead a person to completely be consumed by false fires where they get into all type of forbidden things, as is known. Becoming meaning the as the many ways that people have fallen off the proper path and gone into all types of improper things. By Yeser Mekusher V'Dovek B'Bechinas HaHispaalus Al-Kos Hanal, Yeser Yisna H Zara Zois Hamenagedes Mamish. And the more a person is connected and attached and connected to the true godly inspiration, the more a person that is feeling this type of real, true spirituality, true godliness, the more they'll hate this type and be despise this type of false fire that is the complete opposite, the complete opposition of the truth of a true godly thing. So this type of fake spirituality becomes very intolerable to a person the more that they experience the truth. The inyan zed dak ma'id ma'id, but this distinction between when something is real and when something is fake, when something is sincere and when something is, genuine or not, it can be very fine distinction sometimes. Sometimes it could be a very subtle difference. Obviously, in its most gross form, it's very different, but sometimes it can be a very subtle difference where a person is being real or they're faking. V'nimtza by ribay chilukim shainim bedakas madregas, and there are many different levels in these fine distinctions of all these different degrees of this. V'gam raiv mivini mada lo yavchinu bazet tachas avchana b'chol pratei chilukim. And even most of the people that know a lot, most of the Chassidim that understand a lot about these things, they don't have the ability to really distinguish very clearly when it's good and when it's bad, when it's real and when it's fake, completely properly in all these different levels. Rak b'chlolas havchana bein hargasha leiv basar kulu hanal ubein espilus elokis mamish. They just have this general understanding that there's the difference between when something is fake and it's just this external thing from the heart versus when it's a real godly inspiration that's actually coming from godly. So they recognize that there's this general distinction, but like we're going to see on every single level, there can be subtle differences in the way a person's approaching it, which can make it good or bad, real or fake. And so it's hard for people to recognize those subtle differences without understanding the framework that he's going to explain here. And this is what it says, my heart and my flesh sing praise to God. And like we said, that because when this is done properly, a good godly hispailos can also come into the heart and also be felt in a very real physical way. And so they could be, it could be, this is what's confusing them, is that if they're both happening in the physical heart and externally they feel the same and they look the same, how do you know whether it's good or bad, real or fake? To afal pisha bob and mortgage beyaser, the daimon mamish our goshas has spilus hachitzenis to lave basar be spilus at smusai, shalai be spilus alakus klalu kolhanal. And this can be felt very, very much, and it looks exactly the same as the fake external inspiration that's only happening in the lave bus or just in the heart, the physical heart, where a person is just being inspired from serving themselves, and it's not a godly thing at all. So this is the issue, that the two feelings physically feel the same. When a person is really feeling something, or if somebody can be kind of tricked into feeling something, the physical sensation can be the same. And so this is the issue, is that we can't just look at what a person's doing or the way a person's feeling to make this havchana, to make this distinction. And it's a big mistake to think that the Mitteler is saying that a person shouldn't have feelings or inspirations, or it shouldn't come out in an external way. That's not what he's saying at all. Like you said, the two, whether it's a good and positive and real, or whether it's fake, it can look exactly the same, and both can be felt in a very physical way and can be expressed in a very external way, like we're going to see. So the person might dance or clap or do these kind of things, but the main thing we're looking for is what's going on inside the person's mind. If that is a natural outcome because they're thinking about a godly thing, so then it's real and it's sincere. Or is the person trying to get that feeling and they're really thinking about, look how I feel and look how holy I am, which is a distraction. So we're going to get into all these distinctions, but now he's going to talk about the general difference that it's all based on. This ability to differentiate between these two things and recognize how they're complete, diametrically opposed, or complete opposites. So this general idea that there's these two opposing things of when something is real and when something is fake, that's well understood to everyone that has tasted the taste of Chassidus. But all of the many details of this, exactly how it's applied in every situation, this is what is hidden from most people, even people that know a lot. Gam b'gedolim, even the great Hasidim, shebahem, among them, even the great ones among them. Ad sheyasimu chayshach la'ar v'ar lechayshach mamish, to the point where they can get confused because it's so subtle, the distinction that they can make darkness to light and light to darkness, and they can say something that's good is bad and bad is good. Ki yadua li bar is known to me clearly. Sheyesh rabim shematim es asum shemedam benavshem bespilus leiv basar bargoshas alakis v'hu beemes hargosha gufanis bolvad. And I know this clearly, certainly, that there are many people that make this mistake, that they imagine that they're having a godly inspiration in their physical heart, but they imagine that it's coming from godliness, but really it's just the external physical feeling, and it's not really coming from godliness. Rak tsas taruvis me'ar alaki behelim gadol nimsa bazeh. There's just a little bit of godly light that's mixed into this in a hidden way. Mibilti naidilehem klal, without their awareness. Buhu hanikra rishimu min esbainus kedu, and this is what's called the impression that's left over from this esbainus. So there is some godly aspect there, but it's not really the way it should be. And if they have the right framework and they would know what to do and how to do it, then they wouldn't be making these mistakes. And this general confusion has to do with the fact that Klippas Naiga is very confusing. And this is what it says, that the path guarding the way to the tree of life, that God put the angels of destruction with his spinning fiery sword, the Cherev, Lahat Cherev Misapachas. And it says that that idea of the spinning sword is Klippas Naiga, because it's Mishapech, it could be transformed either up to Kedusha or down to Klippa. And so it's very confusing for people to recognize when it's good and when it's bad, because the same thing sometimes can be good and sometimes can be bad, and sometimes it can be neutral. Also, it's a common misconception that people think it's always either going to be good or bad, but it's not true. It can be neutral as well. So it can be very confusing for people about this. And related to this, although here he's focusing on his baininus, but you have this general topic, this general confusion also about other things. There's a letter from the Rebbe Shab that's printed in the Haisafes, in the back, in the indexes and the addendums or whatever, in the back of Kuntres HaHispaalus Shiur Ch, the treatise on education and guidance or something, whatever it's called. This was a booklet that the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote, the previous Rebbe wrote for the teachers in Taib Chitzmimim about the proper approach to chinuch, and it was based on this letter from the Rebbe Shab that the Rebbe Shab gave to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and so this is printed also in the back there. And there it talks about this idea that when it comes to things that are like Klippas Naiga, that these kind of neutral things, you could have the same thing, and for one person, because it's a necessity based on their job and where they live and their social status, so for them it's a necessity and it's not a bad thing at all. And you could have somebody else that the same thing is just they're chasing unnecessary luxuries. And so you can't just make a list of which things are appropriate and which things are not appropriate, because it all depends on the purpose and person and the situation and how it's being used and what it's being used for, like we're going to see here as well. And now I'm going to explain what I'm saying. Because I'm not coming just to give a drasha. It's not just supposed to be some theoretical philosophy. The whole point is that we should actually be able to accomplish the purpose of Chassidus, that we should reveal godliness in our souls in a completely true and proper way, the way it's supposed to be. So this is not just meant to be a theory. This is meant to be so that we know what to do and we have the proper effect from learning Chassidus. But first we need an introduction in order to be able to understand this general framework. The Mitteler Rebbe soon is going to give us the entire framework of what the different levels are of Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechida, the way they are in the Nefesh Tivis, the way they are in the Nefesh Kiss, and then the mistakes we can make at each level and how to prevent them and correct them. But first, we have to have a general understanding about this idea. To bring an example of this concept, from what I have in the manuscripts of the Maimarim of the Alter Rebbe, the later Maimarim that are called the Ksuvim, Mehani Mili Malyusa, from these exalted things, Mebechinas Pnimius Umsikus Teiras Amor Zal Nishmas Eidin, from the the inner sweetness of the Torah of my father, the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe of blessed memory, Al Inyan Maimer Azayar Kadesh, which the Alter Rebbe explained based on the teaching of the Zayar, the Holy Zayar, Parshas Pekudei, Daf Reish Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph. V'hine ish mar'eu kamara necheshes, that it brings from the Nevuah in Navi, that he said, I saw a person and he appeared like copper, upsil pishtim, and he was holding a linen rope, and he was holding a measuring rod. And so there in the Zohar about this, it says, it's talking about the prophecy of the Beis Hamikdash, the Mishkasa Kadma be Gavnin Kadishin Chushban Delay Slick Lamebeis, that the first covering, here's some of the coverings of the Mishkan, that when they had the coverings of the Mishkan, so there was the inner one was like for decoration, and that was red, and then on top of that they had one that was more just for insulation, and then on top of that there was the colorful one with the tachash skin and everything that was more waterproofing. And so he says that the first covering, it measures 32. What does it mean that it measures 32? So he says in the parentheses, Shu Eirech Hayiriya, and this is the idea that the length of those curtains are Chafches, it's 28 long. The Reich of Dalit is 4 wide. It was made of a bunch of panels, and each panel was 28 ames long and 4 wide, and then a bunch of them were stitched together so that it could cover the entire Mishkan. You can find drawings of this that show the dimensions and everything online. Umishchasa tanina, then the second covering, the lavar, which was outside, the iu lechafia alda, which was to cover this first one, salek lechushban dal. It came to a size of 34. Kiyaries izim, because this goat skin covering, which was for insulation, it was Eirech Shleishim. It was 30 long. Each panel was 30 long, and each one was 4 wide. So 30 plus 4 is 34. Da gara v'salek da salek v'gara, and where the other one, the first one, where it ends and it doesn't cover, this second one extends a little bit further and covers it. V'yiru hatakas habir alzeh hanimsa b'ksuvim etzli, and you can see I have this copy of this Maimer, the Alter Rebbe, and like people in those days would just get handwritten copies and they would get distributed. But eventually this was published. And from that Maimer, you can understand this whole idea that I'm going to explain with all of its details. So if you want to know where it's based on that Maimer. But now the Mitteler is going to explain it. B'yes move on tamtzes ha'inyan, and the idea, the essential point that's understood from that concept, explain that Maimer, she'ikar ha'hefresh bein sirta de kedusha, the sirta de naiga. The main difference between the realm of holiness and the realm of naiga. What's the difference between whether something is holy or something is klipas naiga? Shebekedusha bechinas hakli shehu bechinas hayesha shela'ar. In holiness, you have light and you have a vessel. You also have a keli for the light. So you have some sort of external garment that's holding the light. But in Kedusha, the light is the main thing, and this keli, which is the ego or the identity, the of the light, the way that it's manifest in a tangible way, is completely nullified. It's completely transparent to the light. So it's there, but it's there only to function, to reveal the light, and it doesn't become a distraction in any way. Ubechinas hakli de naiga, in contrast, the vessel of naiga, which is why now it's becoming a klippa, it's becoming like a shell. Yesh morgash, it's felt, b'taisefes meruba al ikar, more than is necessary for revealing the thing. But taisefes zegirayit, in this additional feeling, is a distraction. So, for example, if a person is a doctor and they are very capable and they're somewhere and there's an emergency, let's say they're like on an airplane, they say, is there a doctor here? We need somebody. It's the person, it's not good to be humble and say, oh no, who am I? What do I know? The person has to know, yes, I'm a doctor, I know what I'm doing, and I'm here to help. So that knowledge and awareness of a person's abilities and what they can do and their place, and based on who they are and what they are and their position, that's going to make them more effective and allow them to help people. So that type of awareness is totally holy and healthy and necessary. But as soon as a person starts feeling that superior to others and say, oh, I'm a doctor, I'm so smart, and so they have this ego that's coming from that, that's more than what's necessary to get the job done. So then that's becoming a distraction, and that's this idea of klipas noiga, that when a person has self-awareness of their own talents, they know how smart they are and how kind they are in a way that's more than what's necessary to get the job done. Then that's what's becoming a distraction, and this is the whole thing, that if you have a holy mission and purpose, anything that you're using to help get that done, obviously it's permissible, and things like that. All of these permissible things that a person's using, as if those are necessary to get the job done, and a person's just focused on getting the job done, that's great, that's fine, that's a holy thing. But as soon as a person becomes focused on any of those things in a way that is more than what's necessary and is a distraction, then it starts to detract from doing the job. It starts to distract the person from the job, and then it becomes a klippa, it becomes something that has this potential for negativity. It becomes a mixture of good and bad. Ubir inyan zeh. So the explanation of this matter, Yuvan, it's understood, me inyan chesed u'memchatos, from this idea that it's brought in the Zayar, and it's in the Gemara, it's brought in the Gemara, it's brought in the Zayar, and it's brought in the first parak of Tanya, that we say that the kindness of the nations is a sin, or is deficient, it's lacking. Depends how you want to translate chatas, different levels of it. It could be actually a negative thing, or it could just be a deficient thing. And this is the whole thing that in the beginning he's talking about Perikal of Tanya, that you can have more than you can have people that are serving God and doing a good thing, seemingly. If you just look at the action, you can have, one person is doing a kindness and somebody else is doing a kindness. You can have three people doing a kindness, and one person could be doing it in a way that's really completely self-serving and is actually negative. You can have somebody else doing it in a way that is good, but it's not, so good. And you can have somebody else doing it in a way that's a godly way. So this is this idea that you can have a kindness that's being done, but because it's not done in the right way, it actually, in a certain way, is like a sin. Al kain akli shalai shehu bechinas yesha shalai hu mispasha b'yesh v'midas ha'ar. Because this light of kindness and goodness is not being done in a sense, in a godly way, of the sense that this is just what I'm supposed to do because this is my mission and purpose, or this is my real godly self. It becomes something separate, that a person they want to be seen as being a kind person, and they want to be seen as somebody that's helping people, and it's really coming from an egotistical thing. So because it's their whole desire is separate, so therefore the vessel, the way that they express it, which is the yeshus of it, that becomes very, very big. In other words, the main thing is everybody has to know that they did it. They have to get their name publicized. They have to tell everybody about what they did and remind the person of how much they helped them. And the person has to make sure to honor them for it. And the main thing is that recognition that they're going to get for it. Because they're not really looking to do it for its own sake. They're looking to do it because they want to get something from it. So shehu mispasha b'yesher midas ha'ar, and so therefore this keli spreads out more than is necessary for the light. Who giroyin, and this actually detracts from the light, and it detracts from the ultimate goal and purpose of actually helping the person. Ad shenikra chatos, to the point that it could be a sin. So you could have somebody that is doing kindness for somebody, but only because they want them to love them and show them respect and honor and all these things. And it's actually could be negative and manipulative and hurting the person. And even though they say, oh, look, I'm doing so much for you, and don't you appreciate it? And you're ungrateful, and right. And it can actually become a very poisonous thing. So even though a person could be doing a kindness, but, or it could be, you do kindness, like for the mafia, they do you a favor, you owe them, and then you're stuck. It's not really a kindness. So just because somebody's helping you, not everybody that's helping you, if they don't have good intentions, it's not necessarily, it could actually be a negative thing. It could actually be a sin. And similar to this, our sages say, tzaddikim the righteous, they say a little and do a lot. Pirush, what do you mean that they say? That's the speech. That is the vessel. That's the keli that's revealing the light of the kindness. So aimer ma'at, they just say a little. Hu b'chinas bittul, because the speech is in a way of bittul, that their main focus is not that they should tell you about how kind they are and tell you what they're going to do for you. The main thing is they want to help. The oisim harbe, and therefore they do a lot. In other words, they don't need to talk about it. They don't need to make big promises. And they don't need to talk about it after they did it. The main thing is they want to get the job done. They don't need to get the credit for it. The main thing is they really sincerely want to help. But with a wicked person, it's the opposite. They say a lot, make all kinds of promises. And if they ever do something to help a person, they speak about it to remind the people about it, and they tell everybody about it. So with a lot of arrogance and a lot of ego, especially yesh to cleave, but they end up doing very little, if they even do anything. Because this Kaylee is actually distracting them from the light, from the main purpose, the main goal. So instead of really focusing on helping, the main thing is, and you even see this sometimes with like corporations or institutions, that they want to do something, but then they need to get pictures to put on their newsletter. And sometimes the pictures can become, it becomes a distraction from really doing the job. The main thing is getting the picture. So that's an example. We have to be careful with these kind of things to make sure you keep your eye on the bottom line. What am I really trying to accomplish? What's really the purpose? And everything else has to be serving that. As soon as any of these things become distractions, so then that starts becoming something negative. So this is kind of the general touchstone, the general idea that we're going to be understanding on every one of these levels. And this is really in everything in life. This is the guide in life. We have to have a sense of what's our mission in life, what's something that really has intrinsic value and purpose, and then everything else has to be there as a tool to help accomplish that. And as soon as anything else becomes too much of its own thing, then it starts detracting. And and so the bottom line is just to look, is this something that I need to help me accomplish it? And it's okay. Like, if a kid needs to play sports and to be to have the energy to learn, that's great. That's what they need. That's helping them. If a person needs to do something to relax, whatever, it depends. Every situation is different. Every person is different. But the real question is this something that we actually need, or is it a distraction? Okay, kai gav the mamish anu royim b'chol inyan ubechina saguzma rabba haniris b'spilus chitzonis hamutas b'leiv basar chitzoni hanal. And we see this very same thing, that when a person is having a fake excitement, that there's a lot of exaggeration. The person exaggerates the feeling, exaggerates the their body movements and the shuckling and the clapping and the dancing, all these things, they do it in a way where they're consciously trying to exaggerate it because they want to be holy and they want it to be, intense, and they're looking for that feeling, and they want everybody to see they're doing it, and they want, there's different levels of it. But the point in contrast, a person that's really just focusing on serving God and doing the right thing, they're not thinking about other people and what they're going to see and what they're going to think about them, and they're not even thinking about to themselves, like, am I going to be on this level? Am I going to be on that level? Am I going to get reward or something like that? They're just thinking about, I want to do the right thing and I want to get the job done. And whatever it takes to do that, they do. Um, um, Shazahu and so this exaggeration, the fact that the person is doing something more to exaggerate, it's not just a sincere flow from what they're feeling. They're trying to put on some sort of feeling or some sort of expression of that feeling. That's coming from this yesh of naiga, because it's more than what's necessary to express the real light that's really there, what they're really feeling. And like you see this anytime if you talk to somebody that's being sincere, so they might be very emotional, but in contrast, a person that is, trying to sell you something or trying to convince you of something, and they're exaggerating and they're sweet talking and there's something that's fake there because they're trying to put it on, as opposed to a person that's just really being sincere and speaking from the heart. And that's how you can tell. In general, you can tell if anybody's trying to get you worked up and get you emotional, it's a scam. That itself is the sign. Stay away from anything, or they're trying to, because they're trying to be manipulative in some way, as opposed to just letting you sincerely feel the way you're supposed to feel. Yeah, so V'hu, שזה בא בחספה שיש נויגה, והוא גירוין הפנימיus betachlis ad sheyuhupach mitoiv l'rachas v'shalom. And this yesh of noiga, the fact that there's this extra ego and exaggeration that becomes its own thing, that detracts from the inner light, the inner purpose, to the point where it actually transforms something from good to bad, God forbid. So you can have, again, somebody that seems to be doing the same thing, but because they become very self-aware and they need to exaggerate it, right? It's like if a person, let's say, a kid has a test and they do well and they get a good grade, good. So they can show their parents they should be proud of it. But a person that needs to go telling everybody about it, making a big deal about it more than it's necessary, it becomes a distraction. Even like a very little child, when little kid does something and they accomplish something and they're proud of it, that's good. But then when they start like looking for that, they want everybody to clap for them and they start chasing that recognition, that's becoming a clip, it's becoming a distraction. So even at the youngest age, it's something to, think about in chinuch, for example. Uma sheyugra yeser v'lo yargish hareza ba mitzad taisvis or v'chayis pnimis b'yeser kulu. And the more that the keli becomes bottle, and the more that it won't be felt, doesn't mean that it's not there, but it's not the focus. The person isn't focused on how they're feeling, even though they might be feeling very intense, extreme things, and they might be dancing or crying or whatever it is, but they're not focused on feeling that way, and they're not thinking about, oh, I'm crying. They're just thinking about, whatever it is, and automatically they cry. They're thinking about whatever it is, and automatically they dance because it's a sincere feeling. So automatically, that comes automatically from having additional light, and from the light being and the chayas being more internalized and more deep and more real and more personal. So the more that a person is tuned into the true light, which is the ultimate focus on the purpose, on the goal of what they're trying to accomplish, then automatically they don't focus on the external things, right? And you see this also in like anything, like a person that is really a professional, they're focused on getting a job done. They have all kinds of tools and all kinds of methods, and they use whatever they need to get it done. And you have people that are aspiring to that, and they want to go buy the fancy equipment, and they make a big deal about and copying that kind of external stuff in a way that's really a distraction. Really, they should learn the skills and focus on doing it, and then as they get better, and they'll need something better tools and better equipment, then they'll get better tools and better equipment because it's only there to get the job done. It's not there to show off and things like that. Like some of these great musicians or things like that. Some people, they want to have this fancy instrument or whatever, but a person that's really good, they just want something that's going to sound good, right? They don't care, what brand it is or things like that. Ukanira ba'alo, and like we see tangibly, klolas ha'hefresh hazeh l'chol toyimei tuv tam v'das b'dach, for anybody that has tasted, really experienced this idea of learning Hasidus in a true way, where they understood it and internalized it, to the point where they have sincere feelings from it. Who sharish inin of chana klolas hanal, and this is the source of this general distinction between whether something is kedusha or klipas noiga. And so we're looking to focus, in other words, on what's the goal. And the point is that our goal is to know Hashem, to understand God, and that should be the focus on the hispainus, the process of understanding. And as long as the inspiration is motivating a person to want to know more and understand more and make it more personal and apply it to their life, then that's good. And that's what it should be. But if a person starts just chasing the feeling to the point where they don't need to bother looking and understanding. Like a lot of times we learn something and there's a sikha, there's a mimer, and we don't really understand. But we want to come up with something that we can bring about and be inspired. So people just, like he says, people just make up a pshat, and they don't bother researching and looking up somewhere else, look up a footnote or really, to figure it out. And they just make it up and they're happy and they can be inspired by that, and it turns off the process of learning. And so that's where it's becoming a distraction. As opposed, and if a person is really sincerely wants to know and understand and they don't know, they say, okay, I don't know. Like Rashi, when he says doesn't know, he says, I don't know. He says, what does the Rebbe mean here, and what do we learn from it? I don't know. Let's research it, or maybe I don't have time to research it now, maybe I research it later. But there's no need, there's not a compulsion to come up with something. You have this also, like anytime a teacher's teaching something, when the teacher feels like they need to show the students that they're an expert and they know. So then, instead of saying, I don't know, they feel like they need to make up an answer. But if a person is really focused on on understanding the idea and really conveying the truth of the idea, so they can say, this is what I know and this is what it says, and I don't know. You could say, if you want to know what I think, okay, I could tell you what I think, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. And this is one of the lessons that he's saying here, that we have to really make sure that we're, as teachers, um, that are learning Chassidus and teaching Chassidus, that we're on just trying to understand what the Rebbeim say. And if we don't know, we should say we don't know, and we should, if we can work to look it up and to learn somewhere else where it explains it better. But there's no, we shouldn't feel that we need to make up our own theories about what the Rebbe really means. Right? He says what he means what he says. But we don't understand it, so we have to research it more. Especially now, the Rebbe gave us everything with footnotes. We can do it. Takes work though. Okay. וללידע מזה כל הסימנים בפרטי פרטיס חלוקס המדרגס מבלי הטס עצמי כלל, and from this general principle we are going to come to know all the different signs of what this looks like on every level. We're going to see what it looks like to have the kedusha and have the klippa that's a distraction on each of the levels, like we said, of nefesh ruach neshama chai yechida. So, but in order to do that, yesh lahavin tchila b'sharish inyan heder hagashas atzmusay legamri b'spilus alukus hamorgish b'lei basar. Now, we first need to understand, how is this possible that a person can feel something in their physical heart, but because it's a true godly thing, so it's without, we said it's like without feeling, that it's without self-awareness. So how can you have a very deep physical feeling that you without self-awareness? So the chura seemingly it's impossible to believe that you can have such an experience. That you should have a deep feeling that at the same time you don't feel. That this seems like a complete contradiction. And so we're going to explain it, but the basic idea is that there's a difference between having a feeling and having self-consciousness, or being very like self-aware about the thing. When a person is just sincerely happy or sad, so yeah, they feel it, but their main focus is not thinking about how they feel. Their main focus is thinking about what's happening to them that's making them happy or making them sad. If a person wins $1 million, they're thinking about the money and automatically they're happy. They're not thinking about, wow, this feels so great. The same thing, and that's the idea, that a person's focus needs to be on understanding the godliness, and automatically they'll get drawn into it, and they'll have whatever feelings they have to feel, and it's going to be very real and very powerful, and even affect their physical body, but it's not something that they're very self-conscious about. And this is the idea, like when a person becomes very self-conscious, self-aware, where they're thinking about how other people are thinking about them, or they're thinking like, oh, am I feeling the way I'm supposed to feel? They're like monitoring themselves in a way that's a distraction, and it's unnecessary and unhealthy. Okay, v'yesh lahaktim lazeh. For this we need introduction. B'inyan hanigan, the idea of a nigan, of a song. Ma inyani, what's the idea? Ukiyadua b'inyan maimer deraya mehem nohayi menagim mitzleisa b'chol mini nigan kulu. Like it says that Moshe Rabbeinu, the faithful shepherd, when he would pray, he would sing all sorts of nigunim. It says in the Zayar, liyosei kailel samach reish neshamis Yisrael, because he is a general soul that includes all the 600,000 souls of the Jewish people. V'chol neshama ba'leisa b'sherish b'kar chaytzva hu ayidei ashir davka. And like the Baal Shem Tov explains, famous teaching of Baal Shem Tov, that every single soul goes up to its source through a unique niggin. So there's a unique type of, it says that a niggin is the letters of pleasure. It's expression of the tainug and the enjoyment that the soul has. And every soul has this unique expression that it connects to godliness through a unique song. And this song of the soul it's this essential, natural inspiration that is just part and parcel with the very essence of who the person is. That because they're a godly spark, they have this essential connection to godliness, and every person has a unique flavor, a unique way that they feel that and experience that, and that's the unique song of that soul. Ba'ava b'tainugim, like we mentioned before about this level of ava b'tainugim, k'fi oifen sharsha l'mayla ba'inug alien, based on the source of the neshama in the God's pleasure, and it says that the souls are the letters of God's pleasure, and they're like this, like songs, these nigunim coming from godliness. And And the soul that includes all of these different, the general soul that includes all the 600,000 specific sparks is the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu, the faithful shepherd, or the Rebbe, the leader of each generation, is this general soul. And therefore, when he would daven, he would sing every type of song because he would had to connect in the way that every single individual soul connected, and help connect them all to their source and relate to each person's connection, as is explained elsewhere. But first, what is the nature? We have to think a little bit about the character of inspiration when a person is, as expressed in a song. The whole idea is that a person is thinking about something. Sometimes a person is learning chassidus or thinking about something, they'll spontaneously start to sing a nigun, they'll start to sing a song. Davka. Bilti b'chir v'ratzon sichli klau, and it's not intentional. They weren't trying to sing. They didn't have in mind to sing. They just break into song. And this is actually, I've heard, maybe it's based on this, the Chassidim say this is a sign of a proper davening, that after a proper hisbonenus, proper davening, a person will spontaneously start singing a nigun. And again, they're not trying to, it's just that it happens. And this is this exact feeling where it's very felt. In other words, it's having a physical impact. The inspiration is causing him to sing a song, whether it's a happy song, whether it's a sad song, whatever it is. What they're thinking about inspires them to spontaneously start singing. So it's felt, but on the other hand, it's not felt in the sense that it wasn't intentional, that they weren't trying, they didn't have in mind that they were going to start singing. It was spontaneous. Because the person wasn't trying to have this feeling of inspiration. It just happened automatically, spontaneously, without his intention. And therefore it's as if he doesn't feel it. Like clouds, as if he doesn't even know about it. Mamish, the very same moment that he's doing it. And sometimes a person cannot even realize, right? That person could start singing or, snapping their finger and things like that, and they don't even realize they're doing it. They're just humming a tune. So Zahu hanikra heder hagoshes atzmei bezeklal, and this is what's called that the person doesn't feel himself at that time, even though obviously he's feeling it. But this is a very felt inspiration, right? So you can see a person's happy and they'll walk and there's hum a happy tune. Maybe a person is feeling tshuva, Cyrus tshuva, they'll start singing. Maybe this is related to, it says the Alter Rebbe, everything he would say was with the nigun, because he always felt this deep inspiration and tainig when he was doing. And we see this type of inspiration also when a person hears that they will spontaneously break into joy when they hear good news, right? A person hears that you won $1 million, they had a baby, somebody was, is engaged or things like that, that they're somebody they love and care about, they just right away they're filled with joy. Certainly they're feeling it, the liba, they feel it in their heart. So we're not saying that a person should be cold and not feel it at all. So we should definitely not make that mistake at all, right? When we say that it shouldn't be felt, we don't mean that a person should be cold and not have feelings in any way, shape, or form. A person should have the full, deep experience of all these human emotions of joy and sorrow and all these kind of things. And you see, like the Rebbe showed tremendous joy, and at times the Rebbe also cried and sobbed, and a person should feel all these feelings as appropriate, but it should be sincere and spontaneous. Until the point where a person's so happy from hearing the good news, they'll start clapping and dancing and jumping and things like that. It's automatic and it's spontaneous. Like, for example, the person start clapping his hands. And it wasn't that he chose and consciously chose to do it or wanted or intended to do it at all. It was just an automatic, spontaneous thing that happened. Because he's really, that's the sign that it's a real, sincere feeling. The fact that he wasn't trying to do it, he wasn't consciously telling himself, okay, now I'm gonna, like the joke is that it would say in the machzor, now you should cry, right? That a person doesn't have to tell themselves, oh, now I'm supposed to dance, now I'm supposed to cry, right? A person's at, their son's wedding or something like that, they don't need to be told to dance. They feel simcha, they dance. Um, and he's not being self-aware. He's not thinking about himself, im mispal, whether or not he's inspired. He's not thinking, oh, am I being as happy as I should be? Because he's just thinking about the happy news. Hagam shemur geshes believe, even though he does feel it very much in his heart. But that's the point. He's feeling it, but he's not having that extra self-consciousness. And that's the idea that, like, when we're a little kid, we start building this self-consciousness to think about, what am I supposed to be doing? What do my parents want me to do? So we have to build this self-awareness where we monitor ourselves based on others. And that's a necessary thing, and that's can be positive, and that's the idea of that the levush naiga is like a protective thing to protect the children. That's the way it's described. That's called the levush chashmal. That's the healthy aspect of it. But there's also a certain point that as we grow up, we need to be able to get beyond that and break out of that, and not just be doing things based on other people and how they're going to perceive us and what they want us to do and what we think we're supposed to be doing. We have to just be our real self and come in touch with who we really are and be able to just be sincere and spontaneous based on who we really are. And that's what we're looking for here. And so even though initially a person might need to be doing things for others and have that kind of klipas naiga type of awareness, which is also the idea of like extrinsic motivators where you're doing something for a reward or a prize and that's coming from somebody outside of you. But eventually a person should get beyond that and be able to do something lishma and do it where it's real. And that's this idea that we're trying to get at. But when a person is real, they're not feeling things less. On the contrary, they feel things more because they're not feeling it because they're supposed to feel it, because they're being told to feel it. They're feeling it because they really genuinely feel it. But it's with the feeling is without that extra type of monitoring, that type of self-consciousness and self-awareness, which is the klipas naiga in general. So sincere feelings are the idea of like zerampin, of just the midas themselves, and then that type of self-awareness where we monitor ourselves based on external things, like what we know we're supposed to be doing or what other people are going to think about us. That's the idea of klipas naiga. So even though it's felt in their heart, like he doesn't know about it at all. And this is because it's a true inspiration, it's a true feeling. It's because the feeling is coming just from the thing itself, from the good thing. That his soul is very attached to this good thing. I'm going to fix this. And then he won't have this be thinking about it. He won't be feeling whether or not he's excited. He'll just be thinking about the thing that's making him excited. He ain't a kavanah because he's not trying to, right? When a person gets happy because of this kind of good news, he's not trying to get himself happy. He's not trying to get the feeling. He's not trying to get the high. It's that in these type of feelings are an automatic and natural outcome of the thing itself. To the point where a person might not even realize that they're getting so excited right afterwards. If you say, "Oh, do you know what you were doing?" and it was so, they weren't even aware of themselves. Like we see, lahepoch was also the opposite with a negative feeling. When a person gets angry, right? The person, like we say, they lose themselves, they lose control of themselves. They don't realize how they're behaving and that they're screaming and whatever, and right, they're not aware of what they're doing because they just get so overcome by the anger. So that's a negative form of it. But we see that any real feeling, whether it's positive or negative, it's the person just thinking about the thing that's making them happy or sad or angry or whatever it is, and automatically they react appropriately. So in the beginning, there's this period, like again, as a child, where we train ourselves to make sure that we act appropriately, and that's the positive purpose for klipas naiga, which is the idea of like a shell. A shell is there to protect the fruit until it's ripe and it's mature and it's ready to grow. So in a similar way, we need to have this kind of self-monitoring and self-consciousness to help make sure that we behave properly. But once we're mature enough, then we want to reconnect to our inner self that was kind of being stifled by this klippas noiga, and we want to have these sincere feelings. And in this case, we want to have sincere godly feelings that come from a real hisbaininus. Masha enkin the hepach. On the other hand, unlike the opposite, bispilus hanisis, when a person is just trying to make themselves feel a certain way, they're acting al yidea kavana betchila. They're trying to think about something in order to get themselves to work themselves up into a feeling. So, like for example, a person might think about all different types of hisbainus, contemplate this and contemplate that, until he'll become moved. He just wants to have that feeling. So let's say a person knows, it's Yom Kippur or Tisha B'Av, whatever I'm supposed to, and they know I'm supposed to be sad. So they're going to try to think about things to get themselves to cry, right? And then they'll be happy. Oh, look, I'm so holy, I cried. So that's fake. And they're waiting. When is this going to come, right? And I remember being a kid and feeling like this, that I was coming to daven and I want to daven and have it be a proper Hasidish holy davening, and so I want to think about things until I get a warm fuzzy feeling, and then I can feel I daven properly. So that's what he's saying. That's a distraction. It's not the way it should be. If a person doesn't get the feeling they're looking for, then they'll be pained. When the feeling comes, Yismach will be happy. Oh, look, I'm inspired. If he feels it's very fiery in the way, with a appropriate feeling, the way he wants to feel, then he'll be happy. And if not, he'll be disturbed, to be upset. But when it comes to this matter, even though the general idea is understood, most of the Hasidim are confused, very confused. One says this approach, one says that approach. One says it's completely forbidden to have any of this type of excitement. And the other one says it's permissible. And there's people in the middle. And so therefore I need to explain this and clarify it very much. Because this is the foundation for being able to internalize Hasidus properly in davening. And so this is the end of Parak Aleph. And in the next Parak, the Mitteler is going to start going through what it looks like for all these different levels of inspiration and motivation, going from the levels of Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechida, of the Nefesh Aktivis. And so we'll understand each one on its own. And then he's going to explain the difference between the Nefesh Elokis, the Nefesh Aktivis, and the Nefesh Elokis. Then he'll explain the 5 levels of Nefesh Elokis. And then he'll explain the mistakes we can make and what we have to look out for on each level, the different pitfalls. So we're going to now take this general klal and plug it in and apply it to all these different details. But this is the main touchstone we should always be looking for, is that we want to be focused on what is the real purpose, what's the real goal, and we should just keep our eye on that goal, and automatically everything will fall in line. And if we just are sincere and focus on that, the bottom line, then eventually we'll get things aligned properly and it will get right. And obviously understanding this framework is going to help us do that more successfully. Okay.